Hey guys, Tarke and a cat and a light, so hopefully it doesn't start buzzing. So we're here, maybe not a cat, we're here with the Legion class preview series Mage, which has just been uploaded. This is my first impressions. I'm particularly hyped to see how fire is going to change or not change. So without further ado, let's just get through it. So we continue our early look at class, specialization and design with the Mage. In these blogs, we'll be exploring class identity, discussing Legion's new designs, and presenting core combat abilities for each specialization, laying out the foundation upon which talents and artifacts will build further. With that in mind, let's delve into what it means to be a mage in World of Warcraft. In terms of definition and overall design changes, mages lay in contrast to the classes we've talked about so far in the series. Mages are in a very strong place compared to most classes, both thematically and mechanically. There's a lot of distinction among Arcane, Fire and Frost mages, with each exact type of caster and specialization heavily in a single school of magic, and each of the three schools having strong themes and constant properties. Arcane magic warps time and space and controls the flow of mana. Fire magic unleashes destructive force that spreads chaotically, and Frost slows and controls, setting foes up for devastating strikes. The changes we've made, careful, gnome swag. The changes we've made are more to prop up existing gameplay for all skill levels and provide some quality of life improvements. As a simple example, Summon Refreshment now automatically provides you with a stack of food if you're adventuring out on your own, or a table of refreshments when in party or raid. So that's pretty nice. Arcane. Mages of the Arcane are diviners of secrets, balancing the ebb and flow of incredible mystic energies. Unparalleled skill is required to manipulate the volatile forces of the universe. These practitioners push their magical knowledge to its very limits, often the brink of their own exhaustion, and at great risk to the world around them. Those who master this craft are capable of releasing a barrage of unrelenting power upon their enemies, drawing upon replenishing energies to maintain their assault for as long as the battle demands. So pretty cool RP basically. Gameplay. Arcane Mage abilities and gameplay already deliver on the spec's fantasy quite well, so most changes are in the vein of polishing what's already there. First, for added mechanical clarity, Arcane charges are now an actual resource located underneath your mana bar instead of a stacking debuff, finally, so basically like Shadow Orbs or something. The functionality is very much the same, but this change should make their accumulation and use more distinct. The one significant gameplay change is that Arcane has a new mastery, which increases your maximum mana by a percentage, and increases the damage bonus from Arcane charges. This should make the mastery feel a bit more interesting by allowing more aggressive mana usage as your mastery improves, and feel more empowering, ultimately giving you much more control over your rotation. Pretty standard stuff then. Arcane Blast. 5% mana, 40-yard range, 2.25 second cast. Blast the target with energy, dealing moderate arcane damage and generating an arcane charge. Arcane Blast damage is increased by 50% per arcane charge, and its mana cost is increased by 100% per charge, so nothing really has changed that much there. Arcane Missiles, 40-yard range, channeled. Launches 5 waves of arcane missiles at the enemy over 2 seconds, causing minor arcane damage per wave, generating an arcane charge. Arcane Missiles damage is increased by 50% per charge. Arcane Missiles has a chance to be activated after each of your damaging spells cast, limited to 3 charges, so again, no real changes there. Barrage. 0.5% mana, 40-yard range, instant 3-second cooldown. Launches bolts of arcane energy at the enemy target, causing strong arcane damage. Consumes all arcane charges. Arcane Barrage's damage increased by 50% per arcane charge, noticing a pattern, and it hits one additional nearby enemy target per arcane charge for 50% damage. So far nothing's really changed except for we're now getting stacking buffs rather than debuffs. Evocation. Channeled, 1.5 minute cooldown. Gain 25% of your total mana instantly and another 75% of your total mana over 6 seconds. Mastery. Savant. Increase your mana regeneration rate and maximum mana by 20% with Mastery from typical gear. Arcane charges increase the damage of affected spells by additional 10% with Mastery from typical gear. So basically you get more mana, your arcane charges hit harder. Fairly basic. Displacement. Instant, 1.5 minute cooldown. For the next 4 seconds, casting Blink will not trigger its cooldown. Okay, Arcane Mages are the new flag carriers. That is absolutely insane and ridiculous, but pretty cool, and it does fit the spec quite well, so I'm not too upset about that. Additionally, to give you an idea of how some talents may build upon this, here's an example of one of their arcane-specific talents. Quickening, passive. Arcane Blast and Arcane Missiles also grant 2% haste for 6 seconds. Stacking. Okay, so they don't say what that stacks up to, so I imagine that's just going to be just ridiculous high amounts of haste, which is quite cool because it builds into this whole mana flow thing of if you have too much haste and you're casting too quickly and not clearing stacks, you're going to run out of mana. Pretty cool. And again, this is cleared when you cast Arcane Barrage, so yeah, it's you get crazy high haste and then you have to clear and then you build that power back up. Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. I'm a big fan. Right, Fire. This is the one that I'm really interested in. Hopefully it is a bit more controlled when it comes to the RNG. Fire. While any worthy mage is an unparalleled expert in the use of magic and heavily dedicated to their craft, those who master the forces of fire tend to be a little more audacious than their peers. If a threat stands before them, the answer is always to neutralize it in a glorious blaze. A lifetime dedicated to the study of fiery forces only fuels their pyromania, and these mages take pride, even pleasure, in igniting their enemies in wild bursts of flame, mistaking their affinity for watching things burn as a lack of self-control at your own peril. Gameplay. Similar to Arcane, Fire already exudes its core identity, so our changes are focused to gameplay. Ultimately, you'll have more freedom in what buttons you press and more control over the heating up mechanic, which is core to Fire Mages. In particular, the Inferno Blast ability was trying to fill two roles, spreading Ignite and forcing a hot streak from heating up. If you don't know, basically you had to get 2 crits in a row to get an instant Pyroblast, and you could use Fire Blast to force a crit, and so you would wait, you get 1 crit, then you Fire Blast, then you Pyro. So that's what they're tweaking here. In particular, the Inferno Blast ability was trying to fill 2 roles, we already covered that. We've opted to move the spreading to innate property of Ignite, and we've taken Inferno Blast off the global cooldown, so you can more freely and intuitively use it to trigger a hot streak. Okay, so basically you'll no longer use it for Ignite, and because it's off the GCD, you can spam your abilities a bit quicker. Pretty cool. Another major change is the redesign of Combustion. They do this every expansion. It's an incredibly complex skill, hard to understand for most people, and has the potential for either ridiculous success or critical failure. With the odds being extremely random and very hard to gauge most of the time, we're redesigning it in something that fits into the fire rotation in a clear and consistent way. Hopefully not in a butchered form. Here's the basic look at the core combat abilities for Fire Mage. Fireball, 4% mana, 40 yard range, 2.25 second cast, same as Arcane notably. Throws a fiery ball that causes moderate fire damage, so no real changes there. Hot Streak. Getting 2 direct damage critical strikes in a row will make your next Pyroblast or Flame Strike spell instant cast and cause double the normal Ignite damage. Developer comment. You may not start a new streak, aka gain heating up, while Hot Streak is already active. It was never our intention for players to sit with the Hot Streak active, then keep fishing for another heating up before throwing instant pyro. In general, we don't like the game telling you to press a button when you shouldn't. Basically what they mean by that is the way you used to play Fire was you would have 1 pyro ready and then you'd queue up like another half pyro so that you could then do like 2, maybe even 3 pyros back to back depending on the RNG. And it seems they want to go away from that gameplay because it meant that you overly hoarded, and I guess it's kind of problematic when it comes to balancing in PvP. Inferno Blast. 2% mana, 40 yard range, instant, 12-second recharge, 2 charges. Okay, 2 charges, that's pretty big. Blast the enemy for moderate fire damage. This damage is always a critical strike. Inferno Blast is not on the global cooldown and can be cast while casting other spells. Okay, so that's really cool. And that'll be quite interesting. So what you'll do is you'll cast it in another thing, and because you have 2 charges now, you can force Pyroblasts off that. So if you need a Pyroblast for whatever reason, you can force it with 2 stacks of Inferno. Pyroblast. 5% mana, 40 yard range, 4.5 second cast. How an immense fiery boulder that causes massive fire damage. Basically, you never hard cast it. I guess maybe at the start of a fight. Combustion. 10% mana, instant 2-minute cooldown. Engulf yourself in flames, increasing your critical strike chance for 100% for 10 seconds. Also grants your mastery equal to your critical strike strat. Wow, okay, so basically every 2 minutes you engulf yourself in flames, which I mean will have a pretty cool visual. Maybe a little too close to home for destruction warlocks. And you get 100% crit. So lots of Pyroblasts, big scary burst. Alright, let's see what the mastery is. Your target burns for an additional 30%. With mastery from typical gear, over 9 seconds of the total direct damage caused by your Fireball, Inferno Blast, Scorch, Pyroblast, and Flame Strike. If this effect is reapplied, any remaining damage will be added to the new Ignite. Every 2 seconds, your ignite may spread to another nearby enemy. So your ignite naturally spreads now. Fantasy-wise, that makes sense. I can imagine that'll be quite frustrating when it comes to it force-breaking CC. That might be a bit iffy, but it makes sense. It's a DPS thing. Dumbs down the spec a little bit, but ultimately pretty good. Note how they don't mention Scorch earlier on, which implies that Scorch will probably just stay the same as it is now. Additionally, to give you an idea of how some talents may build upon this, here's an example of one of the fire-specific talents. Cinderstorm, cool name. 1% mana, 40-yard range, 1.5 second cast, 8-second cooldown. Throw a spread of 6 cinders that travel in an arc and each deal minor fire damage to enemies they hit. So if you take this, it'll basically just add to your rotation because it's on a cooldown, which will be interesting. So let's just try and picture it. So we throw 6 out, they travel in an arc, and they each deal minor. So I'm guessing it's kind of like a AoE filler ability, and it might be a good way of generating crits. If each individual cinder can crit, it might be a good way to force pyroblasts, and you may potentially be able to line it up so multiple enemies get hit by multiple cinders, but we'd have to kind of see that skill in effect to really comment. But interesting. I kind of like what they've done, but it seems a bit tacked on by guaranteeing the crit rather than trying to come up with another way around it, but ultimately it's a good improvement. Let's see what they've done with Frost. Frost mages stand apart from their colleagues in their chosen school of magic focuses on maintaining supreme control over the capabilities of their enemies. Mages who command Frost perform chilling displays on the battlefield. Chilling display, okay, anyway. Rendering foes immobile as they bombard them with ice. Often the blade never reaches the caster before the bitter cold takes hold. The Frost Mage exudes frigid power as icicles form around them, foreshadowing the wintry demise of those who stand opposed on the field of battle. Pretty cool. I went there. Gameplay. Frost Mages are very effective casters, and there are already a lot to like about the spec. Frost-defining traits and abilities are cohesive, the mechanics are understandable, and there are plenty of opportunities, for players to explore unique gameplay at a variety of skill levels. Rather than making any dramatic changes to how a Frost Mage plays, we're focusing more on fixing one particular outlier in their spellbook. Frostfire Bolt. After removing the fire portion of the spell, it began to feel like just another Frostbolt, and we started to wonder how a spell supposedly combining frost and fire wasn't just producing a puddle of water at the feet of the enemy. We've removed Frostfire Bolt and made Frozen Orb part of the core spell kit in its place, which better lends itself to the identity of a Frost Mage. Okay, I've got to agree that it makes more sense, but Frostfire Bolt was such a cool spell. I remember how many people were hyped when it got added to Wrath. I would have liked for it to be maybe added to Fire, or they could have done something cool with it, but Frozen Orb's still cool, so kind of sad, but it makes sense, and, you know, it makes sense, the whole puddle of water thing. So let's just go on. Frostbolt. 4% mana, 40-yard range, 2-second cast, so shorter cast than the other 2 specs. Launches a bolt of frost at the enemy, causing moderate frost damage and slowing movement speed by 30% for 15 seconds. Frozen Orb. 10% mana, 40-yard range, instant 1-minute cooldown. Launches an orb of swirling ice forward, dealing minor frost damage every 1 second to all nearby enemy targets for 10 seconds. Grants the mage 1 charge of Fingers of Frost when it reaches its target. Target damaged by the frost orbs are slowed by 30% for 2 seconds. So Fingers of Frost are staying, not a big surprise there. Ice Lance. 1% mana, 40-yard range, instant. Quickly fling a shard of ice at the target, dealing minor frost damage. Ice Lance damage is doubled against frozen targets, so no change. Brain Freeze, passive. Your Frostbolts have a 10% chance to reset the cooldown of Frozen Orb. That's pretty cool, so basically just going to be hurling Frozen Orbs out every 10 seconds, and the RNG streaks will be real, so that's I quite like. Fingers of Frost, passive. Your successful Frostbolt hits have a 15% chance, and your Blizzard and Frozen Orb ticks have a 5% chance to grant you Fingers of Frost effect. The Fingers of Frost effect causes your next Ice Lance to act if your target were frozen and deal 140% increased damage. Shatter, passive. Multiplies the critical strike chance of your spells against frozen targets by 1.5 and adds an additional 50% chance. So basically you crit harder and more often against frozen targets. Mastery, Icicles. When you damage enemies with Frostbolt, 45% with Mastery from typical gear of the damage done is stored as an icicle with you for 30 seconds. Also increase the damage that your water elemental deals by 45% with mastery from typical gear. Up to 5 icicles can be stored at once. Excess icicles that are generally automatically launched. Casting Ice Lance causes any icicles to begin launching at the target. So they'll automatically launch. When you do your Ice Lance, they shoot out. No major changes there, but pretty good. Additionally, to give you an idea of how some talents may build upon this, here's an example of one of the Frost-specific talents. Glacial Spike. Okay, cool name. 1% mana, 40-yard range, 3-second cast, no cooldown, so make note of that. Conjure a massive spike of ice and merge your current icicles into it. It impales your target, dealing massive damage plus the damage stored in your icicles. It requires 5 icicles to cast. Also freezes the target in place for up to 4 seconds. Damage caused may interrupt the effect. Passive, Ice Lance no longer launches icicles. Okay, so there's a lot to work out there. So the new gameplay is when you get to 5 icicles, you press this. It's 3 seconds, which is quite a long cast for PvP, but PvE I can see it working into the rotation. It's trying to push the Ice Lance gameplay away, because I know some people don't like Ice Lance, but they have to play Frost at times. So that's pretty good, and I imagine it's got a really nice animation. Overall, I've got to say the Frost changes are kind of interesting. They're not... I think for all 3 specs, actually, they're all very minor. I've got to say I am a fan, but I feel like they could have maybe done a little bit more with fire. It seems like the new talents will really change up your rotation, which is quite interesting, because it will mean that your talent choices actually are quite impactful and important. So we can't really give, full judgment until we get to see it all. So hopefully, someone will get beta soon, and I can analyze that a bit and come back with a new updated video. But anyway, I hope that was helpful, and I will have the next Paladin video up as soon as it's available. I'm Tarke, the cat's AFK. Thanks for watching, and bye-bye.